Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. If most businesses are in it for the long haul, why are so many fixated on short-term results? Decision-making is focused almost entirely on efficiency and cost saving, and as a result, people struggle to remember the brand. That's according to brand crusader and co-founder of Agents of Spring, Troy McKinna. Troy has spent a career in marketing positions at iconic brands including Mars, Schweppes and Nestle. Today, he's co-founder of Quest Beverages, makers of calm and stormy mineral water. For business success, marketing principles require patience and long-term strategies, which Troy outlined shortly. First, Chris Ashmore asks Troy why so many businesses have turned their backs on building brand value.
Businesses are getting faster. They're under a lot more pressure from short-term. Disruptive startups are sort of really changing the game, and it means that businesses are running on a shorter cycle. And I think what's happening is a lot of marketing's levers impact the long term. So there's a really great study by a couple of mathematicians around studying short-term promotional mechanics versus long-term brand building mechanics. And what they found, and it's what we found at Schweppes as well, is that if you invest $1 in a short-term mechanic like a price discount or a giveaway, you get a much better return in the short term. But once it's finished, your baseline goes back to where it was. Whereas if you invest $1 in a long-term campaign, you'll get a longer-term growth out of that, but the payback might not be for 12 or 18 months or even longer. And so what everyone's making is a decision on that this quarter or this 12 months, which means a lot of the marketing long-term brand building exercises don't pay back.
So a lot of companies then are perhaps too concerned that spending money on marketing is you don't see the return straight away, so it's money lost. Is that kind of...
I think the challenge is that brand metrics are hard to move and they're much longer term. And so most part functions within a business, sales, supply chain, the finance team, are measuring this quarter or this year, and they're not really measuring the long-term brand metrics. So it's just a bit out of sight. I mean, I think one of the big findings I found in researching for my book is brand value is an intangible asset and it doesn't sit on the balance sheet anywhere. And so it's not actually in anyone's radar. But I'd argue it's the biggest driver of long-term value of a business.
Not just to hark upon that, though, it's difficult to measure long-term KPIs.
Yeah, definitely, because I think the challenge is with the real value of the brand actually sits in the minds of the customers, and it's the confidence levels of your stakeholders like your retail partners, etc. So you're sort of measuring memories and associations that people have in their minds. And so the strength of a brand is around when someone has a need that your brand comes to mind instantly. And that's the real value because that you're top of mind. And then the other part is the retailer piece of when you're thinking about buying, is that brand right in front of you right there and then to make it easier to buy. And so I think those two metrics are sort of more intangible and harder to measure. And therefore, I think they're sort of a bit below the radar for a lot of companies.
If we look at one iconic Australian brand being Holden, why aren't people buying Holden Commodores like they used to?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tragic case study, really. Holden was the number one selling car in Australia. Late 90s, it was selling 95,000 cars in a year. It's going to be lucky to sell 10% of that in the latest year. And I think what happened to Holden Commodore was customers changed, their needs changed, but the Holden Commodore itself didn't change fast enough. And its marketing didn't change fast enough. So if you're a family, and anyone with kids knows this, you try and pack up to go anywhere, and you've got the kids, you've got all the toys that come with that, you've got the scooters, you might have a pet, and you've got to load your car up. So a Commodore used to be a large car. It's now not a large car. All families are going to SUVs. It's the same for tradies. They've got a lot of tools. They're on the road all the time. And they've got a lot more cash these days. And so they're going for a bigger ute. And so what's happened is people have sort of migrated to other categories, other sort of segments of the car market. And, as I said, the marketing hasn't really changed. They sort of, in my view, spent way too long chasing V8 performance, Bathurst type imagery, whereas that's not really important to a lot of people. They're much more after safety or, nice driving experience or something that fit all the tools or the kids or whatever you need to get into the car. And I think in sort of my researching around the company, the lead time on creating a new car is about 5 years, whereas people are changing a lot faster. Most companies are changing a lot more rapidly these days, and so it's just too long a cycle to be able to make a change. Most people aren't in a job that long, and so no one can really see a new car come through from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. Now, is trying to build brand loyalty, is that the wrong approach to marketing?
Loyalty is a difficult topic in that if you think about it from the customer's point of view, the average person makes 35,000 decisions in a day. So we're busy, and most of those decisions are automated, they're effortless and they're sort of unconscious. And so we're not labouring on what we buy. And so what brands do is they make it really easy for people to buy. They sort of come to mind, they're easy to see, the shapes and colours, it's familiar, I can grab it, and it's a quick decision. And so I think it's actually not about loyalty and people loving a brand. It's more around a marriage of convenience. People like to pick up brands that make their lives easier, and that's, I guess, the role of a company is to make their brand or product really easy to buy.
So that's providing brand value, and if that's the goal for a company, how does a company build brand value?
Yeah, look, like in Brand Hustle, I talk about it. There's really 4 parts to building brand value, and it really starts with the customer. People buy brands, products and services to solve a problem for them. And so to start with, you really need to understand what problem you're solving for them. Everyone's got a need of where they're trying to get to or an aspiration, but something gets in their way. A good one I've worked on a lot over the years is water. People know they should drink 2 litres of water a day, but it's boring. And so the job of a branded water company is to make sure it's more interesting. Calm and Stormy is a sort of a brand that I've involved in as a startup, and we've sourced a really great water source that comes from a dormant volcano. It's full of mineral content, which gives a little bit of subtle flavour. We carbonate it to make it really interesting, and so that's our job, is just to make it more interesting than just a glass of tap water. And I think that's the same for every brand, is how do you find a problem to solve for the customer. The second part is developing solutions and designing them in a way that people get. And it's about talking about features and benefits. And so the features are sort of the tangible things that the product or service may contain. And they give people confidence that it's the right thing for them and it's going to be quality product and it's going to be, fit the job. The benefit's really what they're buying, and that benefit is that solving of that problem, as I talked about. And the key here is to talk in a language that's customer-centric. Steve Jobs did an amazing job at this around, the iPod came out. It wasn't the first. Most companies before them had talked about all the gigs and the tech side of things. He positioned it as 1,000 songs in your pocket. And so it's really easy to get as a consumer. It's tangible and it's motivating for me. So that's a big part of it, is designing products and solutions that fit the bill for customers. The third part is selling in a place that gives it a great experience. And so there's lots of sales channels available. Some are really price-driven, where people walk in and they're just looking for the cheapest product. And there's other places where they're really experience-driven, and it's much more of a multi-central experience. And that makes the brand more memorable. It also makes it more valuable. And so it's about finding those channels that you can create a great experience for customers and make it really rewarding for them to come in. The last piece is really around building memories. And so, as I was saying before, people's minds work really quickly. They've almost do a quick Google search in their own mind. And it's about what brands and products and services come to mind instantly when they're thinking about the problem they've got. And so I'm thirsty, I need a solo, I'm hungry, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I want to get myself a Snickers to fill me up a bit more. It's those sort of associations that you want to build. And I guess the key thing is, people are bombarded with messages, and so you've got to be really targeted in how you tell a story to get into their brain, because a lot of them are filtered out. And so it's telling great stories and doing it consistently in a way that people can trust you and that you're familiar to them.
Mm. Well, with your experience, Troy, and the research you've done in the book, what Australian companies would you say are marketing their brand well?
I think what the 4 Pillars Gin team have done in building that brand has been amazing over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. Told a great story about the craft they're doing. They've really Australianised the gin category. They circ the gin through Shiraz barrels to give it a nice different flavour, which is very different to what was traditionally done in that category. So I think they've done really well as a startup. I love there's some brands that are really sort of been around a long time, and, some premium brands like an Aesop has done a really great job within the sort of household product category. Every store is different. Every store is designed by an interior designer or an architect. Their products are great and really premium. They get a great price point for it. They've taken the brand globally. So I think that, really admirable success story.
That was Agents of Spring co-founder Troy McKinna. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.